Going into Devil May Cry 3, all I wanted was the series to go back to formula, back to its roots. After playing DMC2, which I didn't think was that bad, I was hoping that this third entry in the series would be more in line with the first game. If you played 2, then you know exactly what I'm talking about with all its flaws, and I'm sure you have way more than I mentioned in my own review. Regardless, I booted up this game not knowing what to expect, but by the time I reached the end screen, I was exhausted, but satisfied. At its core, the gameplay for DMC3 is the same as the previous 2 entries. You're still running around killing endless waves of demons, but some of the core mechanics were tweaked this time. As soon as the first cutscene ended, the first thing I noticed was that the movement felt so much better than before. It's a good thing these movements were better because the new styles mechanic definitely benefited from this. To no surprise, the game was broken up by missions, but before starting each one, you had the option to customize your loadout, which is where you would find these styles. Starting off, you had the option to choose between 4 of them, with a couple more being unlocked later. At first, I wasn't really feeling this because I thought it would force me to change the way I wanted to play, but once I tried out each one, it became apparent that these are meant to be swapped and changed frequently depending on the situation. If you were to ask me what was the best style to use, it would be the Trickster easily. To put it simply, this action move lets you dash or sort of quick step so you can evade enemy attacks. It may not seem like a big deal, but when you have to press multiple buttons just to roll, it comes in clutch. What makes these actions even better is that they automatically upgrade over time just by using them. I thought this was a good addition because I've always been a fan of in-game upgrades, but what makes these so great is that they're actually helpful. For example, once the Trickster action is upgraded, you can then dash 3 times in a row before stopping. Triggering can be done with a push of one button, making it extremely easy to execute. It was Trickster for me, but once you discover which action best suits your playstyle, you'll find the one that you like the main for most of the missions. Take it a step further and understand what each style does, and you'll know how to adjust your style based on that particular fight. These actions seem like a useless mechanic on the surface, but once you take the time to learn them, they prove very useful during every combat scenario. As much as I love the improved movement, one thing I absolutely hated was the fact that you had to pay for double jump. In the past 2 games, you started out with that ability right from the start, but for some reason, this wasn't the case in 3. I know what you're thinking, okay, this guy's making this a bigger deal than it really is. Just save up the red orbs and buy the ability. And you would be right. I did have to buy the skill eventually, but it should have been available from the start. And to make matters worse, you can't use the ability when you have any weapon equipped. It's weapon specific. I didn't even buy the ability until the very end of the game, so I ended up jumping off of walls and landing on obstacles to grab the orbs and reach high ledges. This brings me to another point that has been a thorn in this franchise's side: the camera. I'm happy to say that the camera is a lot better than the past 2 games, and it made a big difference. For starters, I loved how you could move the camera just by rotating the analog stick, which is a basic function, but I don't think you could do this in the previous games. When moving from place to place, the camera still does that thing where it switches angles after you travel a certain distance, but it's not as jarring as it was before. The enemies weren't placed too high where you couldn't reach them, and even if they were on top of ledges, you could manually move the camera to put them into view. Similar to DMC1, there's plenty of rooms where you're surrounded by enemies and don't have a lot of space to move. Being able to move the camera helped me tremendously as I could always view where each enemy was coming from. Targeting enemies benefited from the camera as well, with it being easy to lock on to each demon even when they're placed at different angles than the other demons in the area. The entire camera system made the gameplay flow nicely, since it was pretty difficult. Unlike the first game, nobody told me that DMC3 is very difficult. I played the game on normal and was getting my ass kicked on several occasions. It's nowhere near the hardest game I've ever played, but unless you play on easy, you can't rush your way through the game and expect to complete a playthrough. You have to learn each fight, understand the enemies, and configure your loadout to make it optimal for every situation. I knew right from the start that this game was going to take a lot of focus. I believe what makes this game so hard is that it felt as if the enemies got stronger and you stayed the same as you progressed throughout the game. Don't get me wrong, I know that you can collect items and upgrade weapons or actions, but even still, it felt as if every enemy had a high damage output while you remained the same. Even regular enemies like these annoying ass spiders were killing me, let alone the boss fights. Speaking of bosses, they were all challenging for different reasons.
It's the stench of betrayal, the odor of that accursed Sparta. I will annihilate every last blood relation of Sparta!
A son cleaning up his dad's mess, huh? Where have I heard this story before?
Each boss was diverse in not only look, but in attacks as well. What I liked about these was how the demons were all unique, making them distinct from one another. No matter which boss it was, they all had attacks that required you to change your loadout. I'd be lying if I said I didn't die a lot in these fights, because I died over and over and over. I thought that the saving grace was that the patterns for each fight were predictable, and if you paid attention, they would repeat them in quick succession. Even with that information, they still proved hard to stop. But I'll give you an example of a fight that appears to be very difficult, but can be finished easily just by swapping your style. The Demon Brothers fight.
In case you didn't get the hint, I'll spell it out. You're a guest. Wants to go through. Got it?
Our job here is to guard this pool. That's right. We can't let you pass.
This early game fight is tough, as you have to fight two demons wielding swords and you have to go against them at the same time. To make it even harder, once you defeat one, the other uses the dead brother's soul and turns Super Saiyan Demon or something. So what can you do? Go into the menu, change your style to Sword Master, and then counterattack the brothers when they use their swords. Doing this causes them to stagger, and then you can go ham and kill them with ease, before one of them gets the chance to transform. This is only one example, but if you truly learn the mechanics, even the hardest boss fights can be beaten easily. In every DMC game, you get an array of weapons to choose from, and this third title continues that trend. Most of them were present in the past two games, with you having a pistol, shotgun, sniper, and a couple others. What surprised me the most was that the shotgun wasn't as good as it was before. When I first unlocked the shotgun, I started using that immediately, but realized it wasn't as effective. So for this game, I leaned on Ebony and Ivory, the pistols, and upgraded those to the max, which proved to be a great decision. Many of the enemies can be shredded with the pistols, so I highly advise you to use those and upgrade them when you have the chance. In regards to the melee weapons, I can say that every single weapon has a purpose and are particularly useful in the boss fights. I liked how you get to equip two weapons at a time and you can switch between them almost seamlessly just by pressing R2. Each of these has unique benefits, and when combined with different styles, you can create unique combos and attacks that serve you well in the combat. If I had to choose a favorite, it would be the sword, as it's tried and trusted, but its skills are nice when upgraded too. Choosing what skills to upgrade for each weapon depends on how you like to play, but be sure to grab the air hike from one of the weapons that offers it, because you're going to need it. Maybe this is how DMC games are made, but I thought the overall loop of the gameplay was a bit repetitive. Obviously this game is about killing a bunch of demons, so some repetitiveness is to be expected, but in this title it was a little different. While in each level you're solving puzzles and fighting various enemies, usually you have to collect orbs or fragments to then insert into a statue to progress. This is fine for a couple missions, but later on, it gets old really fast. In almost every level, you have to find or grab some sort of magical orb to then insert into something else to unlock another item. Once you reach the end game, you'll realize how much you actually do this. This isn't enough for you to drop the game, but you may find yourself saying, damn, I gotta find another orb? Alright, let's get this over with. I played the special edition of the game, which lets you play as Virgil, but after completing the story, I was ready to be done and move on, so my time with Virgil was brief. But in that brief amount of time, playing with Virgil was pretty fun. His sword attacks are fast and sharp, with it being easy to kill multiple demons with just one slash. Movement wise, it's just as good as Dante, so performing actions with different styles felt great as well. Maybe if there was additional story or new cutscenes I would play if you did a run as Virgil, I would have ran it back, but after finishing the main game with Dante once, I was good. The gameplay for Devil May Cry 3 is so much better than it was in 2, and fixes a lot of the issues I had with that game. Even if the game is really hard, learning the mechanics and defeating the bosses is rewarding and puts your gaming skills to the test. The story for this game feels like an actual sequel to the first, and not just a side story. You open the game with Dante accepting an invitation from his brother Virgil, and then going on a journey to get to said invitation. What happens in between is not what you expect, as you see the story unravel slowly as you complete each mission. When it comes to DMC, I would say don't expect a complex plot because they're really easy to understand, at least in these three games. The stakes are made known up front, and the twist that happens late game is one that you may not see coming. To me, the most important aspect of the story is that it had that DMC feel to it. Coming off the last game, right from the first mission, everything felt exactly as it should. The dialogue was serious, but had plenty of corny and funny lines to give it that DMC sort of stamp. There isn't a lot of characters, which makes it easy to focus on the small cast and what their goals or motivations are. Believe it or not, there is some emotion conveyed throughout this story as you see Dante and Virgil battle not only each other, but what they believe in. The struggle between brothers and the impact that their father had on this universe makes everything feel connected and meshes really well together. On the other hand, a new character called Lady, who you'll see early on, has her own motivations, and once you understand why she acts the way she does, it makes it easier to show empathy towards her character. One thing I was surprised on was that there was no Trish. Again, I'm not trying to come off as a Trish lover, but she was a good character and I'd love to see her back in the main story. Not as a playable character, but actually in the main story. Nonetheless, this story is better than you would expect, even if the plot isn't that deep. You gain a deeper insight on Virgil and are able to see the relationship between him and Dante grow as the story continues. Sprinkle in a couple new characters and you have a semi-predictable yet easy to understand story that fits perfectly in this universe. Lastly, I wanted to mention that this game feels like it went back to formula. Playing through this is what made me enjoy the first game so much to begin with. Even from the beginning, I recognized the pop and flair that usually comes with DMC, and it made all the difference. The environments weren't super bright and colorful, but they included those mind-bending, time-altering locations that added another layer to the overall atmosphere. The corny jokes and fast-paced action aligned with what DMC is at its core. Each cutscene portrayed the characters well and had you actually care about them along with the decisions that they make. Before in DMC 2, they introduced characters that seemed like they didn't fit within the DMC universe. Lucia was cool, but outside of her, there wasn't anybody worth noting. Just the fact of you starting the game out inside Dante's shop made it more immersive and had it feeling more in line with the first. Add in the music and unique weapons and this game is everything that DMC 2 wasn't. Before, I didn't understand why so many people would say, skip DMC 2 man, you don't need to play it. But now, I get it. Putting it simply, it feels like DMC 3 is the sequel that DMC 2 isn't. This game is everything that you would expect to see, and if you played the first game, it feels like you're right at home. Overall, Devil May Cry 3 is a hard but rewarding experience that's a joy to play through. The core mechanics have been improved, and even with some small questionable changes, this game is definitely worth a playthrough. For those reasons, I'm going to give this game an 8. The challenge this game presents makes it attractive to those who want to test their gaming skills, but if you master the mechanics, you may find yourself coming back and replaying this multiple times. I didn't rate this much higher than DMC 2, but the difference between the games are night and day. If you're on the fence about playing this game, I would say get it on sale and give it a try. It's definitely worth it. What did you think about Devil May Cry 3? Did you play this? And if you did you think the game was too hard or not hard at all? Let me know in the comment section below, and if you enjoyed the video, feel free to drop a like or subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.
You showed up.
You sure know how to throw a party. No food, no drinks, and the only babe just left.
My sincerest apology, brother. I was so eager to see you, I couldn't concentrate on preparations for the bash.
Whatever. At any rate, it's been a whole year since we last met. How about a kiss from your little brother?